Okay, hi everybody. I'm here with Mr. Ben and Mr. Jonathan, and we're going to be discussing SE. So I'm
Yep.
going to change this layout now to this. Oop,
Oh,
nope,
oh
sorry.
no.
There we go.
Right. So folks, this is from Dario book, 8 Keys to Self Leadership, which came out in 2005, and it's a very good book. And he's got these sort of inventories for each of the 8 functions. And I've highlighted here those parts which are directly related to instinct. And this is to show that I think that Vanderhook was right about his criticism that Jung's name for this function, Jung called it sensation, which is better than sensor, because at least with the word sensation, it connotes an emotional response. So, for example, someone could say, "Oh, it was a sensational performance." So there's like an emotional reaction to what you experience. And Vanderhoek, when he looked at the function, he saw that an emotional reaction was bound up with whatever was being sensed. And so he called the function sensing. And I've gone through various sort of ways of looking at this, and I'm now sort of settled on empirical, sensory, instincting, because I now have the extroverting functions as empirical and the introverting functions as subjective. Because Carl Jung kept on saying, if it's introverted, it's subjective. If it's introverted, it's subjective. Okay, Carl, let's cut to the chase and say subjective and empirical. And so with the sort of the gut instincts of SE. So it's empirical in the sense of it is what you are directly experiencing in the moment. Whereas the Guardian, where what they experience in the moment is filtered through their past experience. And so it's a sort of a subjective appreciation of it. And then they might look at sort of, oh, that's not quite right. That doesn't fit what I'm used to. And I usually like to give this example of comparing people. If you got, I imagine if you got, say, 10 artisans from around the world, say 10 ESFPs from around the world to comment on a certain experience, I think there would be more agreement amongst them because they'd be looking at the sort of the empirical features of what they're experiencing than if you were to then to show that same experience to say 10 ISFJs from around the world. And their temperament would be very different because it's so much influenced by their culture and their sort of cultural baggage, and then what they experience being filtered through that. I believe there would be more variance amongst the SI DOMs than the SE DOMs, and that would sort of show that it's going to that subjective aspect of it in their interpretation. So
That's
again,
interesting.
thank you. And so we have again what it's accustomed to, customary standard. So again, like if you had that 10 ISFJs from 10 different countries, what they're accustomed to, what they follow, this could be all be very different depending on the culture. Guardians are so much affected by the culture. Um, they're very much of their culture.
I
Um,
have a question. So, would you say they they find things that are customary? They want to find things that they can repeat over and over again. Is this due to just wanting to be respectable, reliable in their culture, or is this due to something internally that they want to feel safe because they have this trusted way that they know and they don't want to deviate from that?
It's, it's just more like it's just more like how their brain works. It's like that's like asking, am I intuitive because I'm getting something out of it, or comfortable? Whatever. I'm not intuitive for any of those reasons. Intuitive,
It
I
just
just how it
is.
goes. It
Yeah.
just is, yeah. Same with that. There's not much thought process. So like, they do generally value those things like security and conformity in general, but those are like this is the reason they value those things rather than the other way around. You could say.
yeah. So what you get from Kersey is that Kersey would touch on every now and then. He would reference something called systems theory, and it's like these temperaments are like a system where it's not just one thing; it's a sort of a traits that sort of entail other traits. And it's like a motivational complex that sort of like goes together. It's all part of one motivational system. So it's like an artisan system and a guardian system. And so this part of it is that part of it is that inclination to follow the work of others and go towards an authority and the trusting of an authority. And another part of it is a sort of a natural conservatism, to go towards the tried and the true. And because you want to go towards what works and something that's safe, then going towards an authority on that helps to achieve that. So it's very small c conservative, but we can talk about that next time. This is just to contrast to SE. And with SE, you have these instinct parts. And as we can say, this is just to get my point across that this is more than just sensing. With all the other functions, we can deduce a definition by, say, so for example, with FE, we can say, well, we know what feeling is and we know what empirical or extroverting is, and then put those two ideas together and we can get an answer. But with SE, there are components of SE that cannot be deduced. So if you were to define SE deductively, you would end up with empirical sensing, which basically means you're observant and you listen well and you have very good sensory acuity. That you wouldn't get those aspects of the part of SE about being audacious, challenging, having a thrill in response to the sensory stimulus, wanting to interact with the environment and shape and mold it the way that you see when you look at, say, the artisan temperament behavior and the sort of the keywords that you get from Kersey. Hopefully I've got that slide in here. I'm just sort of checking that I have a key slide in here. Otherwise I'll be annoyed. I think that's it. Actually, I shouldn't use this file browser right now because it can, this one's memory leaked in the past. So I'll use that one. And I'm just going to close this one down and then it'll open it up again. So I just want to talk a bit about the artisan temperament. Thank you, Hailey. And so this gets towards something, because like me, or rather I like Dario because he did it first. Dario learned from Linda Behrens, who was taught temperament by David West Kersey. And when you see Dario's definition of SE, it basically looks like the artisan temperament distilled, and the same for SI. It looks like the guardian temperament distilled. And Dario called his SE chapter in 8 Keys of Self-Leadership, immersing in the present context. And so you've got this. Artisans love being in the here and the now. So that's your present context. And then you've got this audacious part. The self-respect in being audacious. So that means a bravery aspect in there. Challenging. Maybe, and then you can get to these traits of challenging authority. And then the guardians are more towards trusting authority, especially in the SE DOMs. There's sort of a willingness to challenge authority. And you get that power aspect of SE. It's not all SE, as socionics thinks, but it's a part of it. Assertive SE, I call it. And then we've got the adaptable part of SE, where sometimes it's like, if we use the metaphor of the boxer that goes in and then imposes himself on the opponent, or the boxer that knows how to cover up and play rope-a-dope and adjust. This kind of what I call the harmonizing subfunction of SE, the ability to adapt to, well, you know, there's some martial art things like that, Jonathan, where it's like being the weed that bends but doesn't break, bringing your opponent onto you and counterpunching. There's a kind of an ethos there of adapting and flowing, where it can look like the person is being submissive, but they're going in to get themselves in a better position to counterattack. So there are these flavors of SE. I don't just want to say it's power sensing. And again here, what we see from Kersey, trust impulse. And Jeff has said, being impulsive is being alive. So that's part of the artisan temperament. Everyone with high SE, they like a bit of impulse. And it's like this. And this is something I've sort of come into realization like in the past few years. I then thought about impulsive, and it's like, if you've got an artisan that's healthy and no baggage, and they're really in the moment, that means they've got really high situational awareness. And so any impulses that they have are going to be because of their situational awareness and should be appropriate to the situation. And so that you might see such a person, oh, that person has a good instinct because they react well to the situation. These split-second decisions. I mean, before we went live, we were talking about a computer game and the ability to react in the moment. Part of that's going to be experience, but this sort of combat games. So again, yearning for impact as well. Even it's just to get noticed. And you can see the difference here. Belonging. So these guardian, they're pretty opposite to the artisans, where they're trusting authority and they want to be audacious. Well, going about things in a different way. And there's a crazy dichotomy between these two. So these are more by the book, more cooperative. These are more utilitarian. Here and now, artistic, which Kersey defines as sort of like the next attitude is a free variable where there's sort of room for improvisation. But what I'll do now is I'll get more back to my sequence of slides because I originally did it as a proper sequence. And I can do... So for context for people... okay, that's the guardian temperament. I went overboard on that but what I can do here is this is some information for people on the artisan temperament. So I'll let people take that in. What's that? Hands-on, active, inconsistent, in the moment, adaptable, great under pressure, improvisers who prefer freedom to do things their own way. Jeff on SE. It can be about power, but it's always about freedom. E7-ish traits. Tangible in word usage and utilitarian preference with tool usage. It's sort of like they do things their own way. So if you think about the cop in those detective series, the maverick, they do things their own way, and then they usually have a partner who's a guardian who's by the book. And the artisan lets the guardian do all the paperwork and that lot because they're usually sort of ISTJ co-detective. Again, artistry, audacity. Again, they're sort of the IQ. They have a tactical intellect. Being expeditious, the MTTs. Consonant words. So that gives the idea from Kersey that guardians are aware of how stuff sounds, and I've seen some evidence for that. I know a lot the American fighter pilots will rename their aircraft, and I think they rename it to make it sound better. Now I can give some examples. They renamed the F-35 Lightning II the Panther. They changed the Thunderbolt II to the Warthog. That's the A-10. And some of them were watching Battlestar Galactica in 1978. When the F-16 pilots called their fighting Falcons Vipers, because that's what they were called in Battlestar Galactica.
Okay, so Lightning, Thunderbolt, and Falcon sound much better than those other names. That's why I say that.
Yeah, but you're not a guardian. You're not an artisan, though.
I'm clearly better at being an artisan than the artisans are.
Well, Panther. What about Panther?
Yeah, but you said the Lightning. Lightning is better than Panther. Come on.
Well, yeah, but it was called the Lightning II, though, because there was an original aircraft, an original Lightning.
Okay, fine. It's better than Lightning 2, but it's still Lightning, yeah.
Yeah, Lightning's still good. Lightning's still got artisan points. But the point Kersey was making is that they have consonant speech and that they're aware of how stuff sounds. Now, that fits Jeff. But Jeff is a very auditory person. He's very much aware of how stuff sounds. And also his sense of humor is based towards word players. I think there's some evidence that artisans in general like word players more than other temperaments. What do you think, Jonathan?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. So that's just a bit on the artisan temperament. So, so we thought qualitative, that this idea that they're aware of the qualities of things, and therefore their speech would refer to the qualities of things because they've got good senses. And pictorial speech, basically colourful language. And so, because I have a lot of slides to get through. Oh yeah, so we got something from Dario here. I got some permission from him in the past. I hope it's not expired, but we can sort of see here. Right, so we can sort of see how consistent this is with the artisan temperament. Responds naturally to everything tangible you detect through your senses. Check what your gut instincts tell you. Test limits and take risks for big rewards. Can you see instantly that is far more than just empirical sensing? There's an instinct part of it to test limits and take. That's part of the instinct. Do you agree, Jonathan? That's part of the artisan instinct to test limits, take risks for big rewards, and that's very different from the guardians that are looking to stabilize the situation and are a bit more small c conservative.
Yeah. Well, just to remind you, we all get general trends because they all get odd guardian that's more positive. You get the occasional artisan that's a bit more restrained and conservative.
Yeah, so you can get some, say, Enneagram 8 ESTJs who sort of like impose themselves, especially if that's what's conventional in their culture about imposing themselves.
Yeah, or if they've had like maybe a chaotic childhood as well.
Yeah.
Like Ben, you like wrestling, don't you? You're aware of wrestling anyway.
Yeah, I like the story aspects of it. So I'm very much a fan of Alexa Bliss's acting. I think she's going to be a good actress after she finishes wrestling.
I have a theory that Vince McMahon is an ESTJ.
Whoa, 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 whoa. He is like so ESTP. He's more ESTP than Trump. The stories about Vince McMahon, like, seriously.
Yeah, he's a counterphobic 6, definitely. But
wow, I mean, like Vince McMahon, he just changes stuff at the last moment.
Oh yeah,
and like he's like an ESTP, like he's more ESTP than Trump is, and Trump is wickedly ESTP. Vince McMahon is.
Well, it's because he's supposed to be an extremely hard worker who hardly sleeps a lot, and that sounds like very strong extroverted thinking. Like 4 hours of sleep, and then he's walking.
Same as Trump. That's it. They're friends. They're literally friends. Trump and McMahon, they've known each other for decades.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Vince McMahon he's so EST. He's so sort of like.
He did have a very chaotic childhood. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, and he went into military school, I think.
No, Trump. Trump went to military school.
Yeah, Trump went to military. Now, Vince McMahon, I'm not so sure about Vince McMahon whether he went to military school. I know that his father was also in wrestling.
No, Vince McMahon grew up in a trailer park with his father and his mother didn't live together. He had a bunch of brothers and sisters. His mother had a bunch of different lovers who were stepdads, some of whom he really hated. One of whom he says he really wished he'd killed him. He would have liked that. And he was involved in a lot of petty crime growing up because of how messy his life was. And eventually, when he was old enough, he went to find his dad, and his dad was this wrestling promoter, so he started working with him. And they started. His dad was definitely more ESTJ, I admit, because his dad was quite traditional. And there's people say that if his dad knew what Vince was planning to do with the company, he would never have left it to him. But as far as like expanding it and crushing all the competition, but yeah, I suppose ESTP does fit me. very strong extrovert thinking going on anyway.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. It's like, as Dario's shown, and I know, it's just like what you practice, the brain will change and adapt. And even if it's not preferred, that
The
it's
other
like
thing
FI in you, Jonathan. Like just being an
Yeah.
idealist, FI can be trained up in you. Or TI in Hailey. The TI gets trained up. That third function in my model.
I think the other thing was he was quite with Vincent Mann again. He's if you look at a lot of his videos, he does change his personality depending on the situation, and especially in older stuff, he's quite a bit more shy and reserved.
But here's the thing, though. Vince McMahon, and this is where we get into role enactment. Vince McMahon is literally enacting the role enactment. And what I think is, you know, when he plays the Vince McMahon character,
Yeah,
I think it's an excuse to show his real personality.
yes,
And he's just indulging himself when he plays that character.
yeah.
He
Although
really is like that. Because the stories behind the scenes are like that.
Yeah,
Like Kurt Angle just talks about, he will just wrestle people on a plane when he gets bored. Right, and Kurt Angle was saying like he was rubbish, he didn't have a technique. People had to be careful not to hurt him because he wasn't a very good wrestler.
one time. Well, he wasn't that bad a wrestler. He also apparently
Yeah,
apparently he would never ask someone to do a stunt without testing it himself first. So I don't know what kind of stories there are of him throwing himself off ladders and whatever. But I imagine there must be. Anyway,
Yeah, but ESTPs have this ability with the tertiary FE to sort of like play. They can be on their best behavior at times where they need to be. They can go into like smooth mode.
Smooth, but also, I don't know, there's a certain shyness to him at times.
Anyhow, this is not the good example, Jonathan, but this is not the Vince McMahon show. But there's a bit more here to. So here we go. So this is more the sort of like the lessons that he got from. This is more the from what his research was in 2011 or up to 2011. So a little bit more a different flavor on what he showed before. Excited by motion, action, and nature. But what I would say there is excited. Well, that's a feeling. So it's like an emotion is part of it. It's not just sensing. Excited. Adept at physical multitasking with a video game-like mind primed for action. Wanting and liking action. In touch with bodily sensations. Yeah. Bored when sitting with mental rote task. Again, it's part of the overall temperament. Strong memory for details in context. And also, Jeff would say that he looked at Dario's video and he said that Dario said that Artisans had the best short-term memory. Guardians had the best long-term memory. And the NJs were the ones who were most convinced that they were right, but they were wrong. Frequently. And Jeff said that he was listening to that at work with his headphones on and he almost had a spit take when he heard that bit. Use their whole brains to handle crises, may be impatient to finish. Yes, they may be impatient. So, as Jonathan knows, like ESFPs and ESTPs are frequently Enneagram 7 fixated, or we've got 7 in there. Like, so even if ESTP is an 8, it's usually 817. But many of them are going to be like 7. Same with ESFP. Many ESFP 7s. If they're 6, they're probably 617. It's part of that EP mindset. What else? Because we got to slide. I'll ask Hailey, the host of the event. Any sort of comments or questions, Hailey? Okay. Right. Yeah. So I usually like to do my sort of TI argument of relating it to other ones. So how it's different from the other irrational functions. So SE, like excitement, sort of like the new and the novel and audacity. It's opposite from SI in that SI is more conservative. So you got this sort of like challenging authority and going towards physical excitement. And then SI, which is more small c conservative. So that's the difference from SI. And there's a difference in outlook. NE is different in that it's about the commonalities between situations and ignores something that is. So, okay. The NE Dom would look at the commonalities, say, between situation A and situation B. The SE Dom would say, hang on a minute, you're excluding all of those details in situation A that are very important. Even though they're not commonalities with situation B, you need to just concentrate on this situation. This situation is different from situation B. It's not about commonalities, it's about this particular situation here and now, and you've not encountered this situation before. You need to go with what is in front of you. So that's how it's different from NE. And it's different from NI in terms of here and now versus this intuition of development, seeing how things change. So NLP would call that through time, and for NI, intuition change, and SE is now, in time, in the present time, in the present place. And so that's how it's different from the other irrational functions. And so that's sort of like a TI argument where it's like you want it to be symmetrical and get them opposite, but I'm also can point at things and say, this is how it is, rather than it doesn't sound like it's something that's made up from the past. I can give an example of how SE is different from SI by pointing at things in the actual guardian temperament that you see on the whole type pattern level. That on the whole type pattern level, people will agree, yes, guardians are mostly small c conservative. And on the whole type level, artisans are usually more audacious.
Just says people will be watching this. When we say a small c conservative, we mean like conservative to their environment and their upbringing and their backgrounds. Like if they're left wing, there's a good chance that they were raised left wing, for example, and they haven't really changed that much.
I'll just give an example of that. The person who grew up in a union household, in a trade union.
Yeah, and there's still exceptions to all this as well. There will be guardians that do change for different reasons, but usually they're a bit sore to change in general. Yeah. And if people want to see an example of a guardian on this channel that's a little bit different from the stereotype, look at Kristen. I think she's created a subtype of an ESTJ. Like she takes an idea from socionic, social benefit wins, and applies it to education. So, but she's still got that. And so, yeah, if people see the videos with Kristen, you can sort of see that almost like her first instinct is guardian. But her parents, one INTJ, one ESFP, were always trying to get her to do things her own way. But she wanted the authority. It's like she wanted them to be the authority that they didn't want to be. It's like, but anyhow, well, we'll move on. So yeah, that's the sort of differences. Oh yeah, and you can get sort of tandem use with that, where it's like you've got the energy and the dynamism of NE when combined with NI in terms of directing that energy towards a specific goal, then that can work well in combination. It's like the athlete or this person in sport that has a singular vision of where they want to get to. You can see, right, they've really got the SE working with the NI. This person is driven. Whereas a lot of times you can have SE DOMs that don't really know what they want. They're sort of acting a bit more E7-ish and hedonistic. Whereas usually the people that succeed in sports, yes, they've got the artisan traits, but they've got that strong drive and maybe a stronger 3 in them as well. I have to pause there for Jonathan. But these are sort of like the almost like your top tier artisans, where they have all the benefits of SE and less of the downsides of SE, where they're sort of less hedonistic and more driven.
So what else do we have? Ah, yes, from Linda Bones's book, and I will mention it. Dynamics of Personality Type. Very expensive to get. Dario sent me the PDF and then I printed it off. It's like $170 or something because it's out of print. So apparently this is her best functions book. And I like what she's done here. Yeah, and this whole page was about the connection between functions and temperament. So artisans meet their needs for impact and freedom best through the process of extroverted and sensor. And again, that's what Kersey put. Impact. They want impact. This process keeps tuned into the needs of the moment, here and now, and they can readily take tactical actions, the tactical intellect in Kersey, and seize opportunities. Again, you can see how that's different from being conservative, sticking with the tried and true.
Different from small C conservative. That is not.
Yes, small C conservative, yes.
Obviously, we are conservative artisans.
Yes. Yeah. Right, so if we go on to the next slide. Oh, we sort of did that before. Oh, because now it's in a different order because the other viewer didn't view it in the same way. Right. Yeah, this. If you were to just deduce it from extroverting and sensing, you would get to this. Gut instincts you wouldn't get. But you see here, read visible cues you would get, but not this bit. To see how far you can go. That's part of the temperament. Wanting to test the boundaries. Yeah, and then take advantage of immediate options for action. The wanting to take action. The wanting to take advantage. It's part of the complex of the... So what Dario's doing here is, it's like, he's doing the artisan temperament. This is the artisan temperament, isn't it, Jonathan? All these boxes, it's artisan temperament stuff. And so this shows just how much Dario has been influenced by Linda Behrens and Kersey in his definition of SE and SI. And I think that's great, because I like temperament as well.
Yeah. It makes sense for the SPs and the SJs, though, because all the SPs have strong SE and all the SJs have strong SI, whereas for the NFs and NTs it's a bit different because the functions are different and Kersey had to be awkward.
Yeah. Kersey had to be awkward, yeah. What you mean with the way he did it asymmetrically?
Yeah, like NF, instead of SPSJ, NPNJ, he did SPNJ, NF, NT.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It's just,
Yeah, it's just because the instincts are so different that it's so important in concrete types, because I think the way I look at it is that abstract types do more interpretation. And so the kind of interpretation, whether it's intuiting with feeling or intuiting with thinking, is more important than the kind of perception, whether it's NE or NI. But I mean, I do state that the clubs are very important as well. Like, so SF and ST. But yeah, temperament is huge. And so again, thrill of action is very much part of the instinct. And so if we were just using socionics just concentrates on maybe this bit. Spur action and get results simply by making your presence felt. So that's the power part of SE, the assertive part of SE. And so, like with many socionics definitions can be too narrow. Like NI is just intuition of time. SE is just power sensing.
Yeah, I would say that their ability to be assertive and power sensing stuff would be, I would say that's related to them being in the moment and being perhaps a bit short-sighted and not thinking through the consequences. Like, it's a lot easier to like walk up and talk to someone or do something with it if you're not thinking about what happens next.
Oh yeah, an example I gave is I saw something, just a woman goes up to a man and kisses him, And she says, "Oh, I just felt like it." And it's like, female characters can do that. If that was a male character, policeman. Right. So yeah. Right then. So yeah, subfunctions. So try to sort of get all of those aspects of SE into a definition. So yeah, empirical instincting, or sensory instincting, as I like call it, stimulation and attention, and immersing in the present context. So that's Nardi. Again, attention. William James. Attention is the essential feature of willpower. So that might be part of the power sensing part, Jonathan, in that if their attention is so good, there might be a link between attention and willpower, and then sort of like the ability to, you know what I mean? Like if you've got an SE Dom focused, they've really got the attention, then I think that's part of the reason why the willpower can be good, because they're focused on it. And again, William James, who's very highly esteemed philosopher. They once did a poll of like who were the greatest psychologists. And William James was like 1 or 2.
Yeah. Well, he was a philosopher as well. Yeah.
Right.
So are you saying he was an SP?
No. I was just saying that I hear a lot about William James, and he seems to have been ahead of his time. Just like somebody else at that time, Charles Sanders Peirce, who came up with semiotics, and he did a lot of stuff like with American pragmatism and stuff I don't know, but like Kersey read about. Yeah, because I used to think there's not many American philosophers, but it's like we just don't. They're just not as popular. But there are good ones from the late 19th century, early 20th century. There are these really good American philosophers in that the movement of pragmatism. Like Kersey talked about someone called Dewey.
Yeah, Dewey, John Dewey.
Have you read some of his stuff?
I haven't read a lot of. I know of him. I haven't read him personally.
But you have an idea to think, oh, this was like a serious person who had good ideas.
Yeah, he's a known philosopher. You find him in you might find him in some general history philosophy books, and if you're in there, you've made it. So yeah, there's video of him on YouTube as well. I think he's a hardcore empiricist.
Yeah. And that's the kind of school that I think Kersey was part of, like the sort of like what he was going towards.
Yeah, a lot. Usually the empiricists were more Anglo-American sort of thing, whereas rationalists were more continental Europe stuff. Some exceptions, but generally, there's also something called analytical philosophy, which is like the view that science is sorting most things out, and philosophy just needs to support science, more or less, simplifying what general is, and that's more Anglo-American as well. Whereas continental Europe is more existentialist stuff. And
like Sartre. Yeah. I'll just say that Kersey wrote that he was taught by Gestalt psychologists, and it may have been the ones that came over from Europe, literally the Germans that came over and taught him.
Yeah.
And so that's why he was into wholes and systems, because also systems theory came in the 1950s, and so he had these reasons for being against functions. Kersey. I just got to put this fan on. Sweltering. So again, so what I would say is what socionics says about SE, like the power part, and that we can see from somebody like Vince McMahon or somebody like Donald Trump. Well, I'll just say that is part of SE, but it's not all SE. It's a part of it. And Kersey would talk about that. He would say, like, he would give examples of American generals that were, say, ESTPs, that were like Mike Patton. What else? I think he gave an example of Hemingway being an SE Dom. He might have said ESTP or ESFP.
ESFP, I think Hemingway usually does.
Yeah. So you can see there that assertive part of SE which is basically how Socionics defines it. Too narrow. It's too much the blood and guts, hard edge part of SE. It's not the creative part of SE. I mean, someone like Jeff doesn't do the assertive SE kind of stuff and sort of imposing himself. That's more typical of ESCP, which is directive.
But I've seen Socionists type Homer Simpson as SEI, which is, the ISFP.
Yeah,
Because
he likes food. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're defining SI and Sociology as hedonistic. And I guess there is a hedonistic component to SI, but it's not the same as
it's
hedonistic SE. It's not the
what
same
it
as
is.
hedonistic.
Yeah. Sorry, Jonathan. I'll show you a picture in a moment. Please continue.
Yeah, so SI can be hedonistic in the sense of enjoying comfort and stuff, but SE is hedonistic in the sense of living in the moment and enjoying yourself more.
Yeah. I'll ask Hailey to put a picture. If she focuses on my square, I have an example of a SI hedonist.
Oops.
We'll get there.
No. Okay. No.
I think I lit redder there.
Yeah.
I think it was F me. Okay, we'll go with that. So
Good job,
at least the camera has focused on it. So you got there the aesthete, like the person that's sort of refining their pleasure, like the sort of the connoisseur. The connoisseur could be an SI dom. We can have difficulty in expressing our own unique vision and creativity. So you can imagine that such a person could be like, if you saw such a person, you might think ISFP, ISFJ, but there. So that would be my idea of like, sometimes SI can be like that, where, because they know what they like, have very refined tastes, that sort of thing. I've got to stop the light going right on me. I'm being blinded. So the blood and guts kind of SE, or the Socionics power sensor. Like I said, the sort of stuff, and I think that certain of the artisans are likely to show certain of these subfunctions more than others. So, for example, ESTP are very likely to show the assertive subfunction of SE because of their interaction style, which is initiating or in charge, as Linda Bones calls it, because they're directive and they're expressive, and so the assertive subfunction will be sort of correlates to that. The creative subfunction, I think, this is where it gets tricky as to whether it's SE with FI or FE with TI, because it's like it works together. And so again, and Kurz's artisan temperament is biased towards the creative subtype. I think that Dario thinks that as well, and that the Kurz's guardian descriptions are biased towards the normalizing subtype. But somebody like Kristen, even though she's creative, you can still see the guardian temperament in her. So again, the sort of like the essence of Kurz's artisans, the improvisers, the tactics, the ability to improvise in the moment, the fact that I think, like, if you look at most actors and actresses, like, there's going to be a lot of ESFPs in there, also a lot of ENFPs. But that's just my. I think I encounter a disproportionate number of ENFPs because of the way my writing is. But there are quite a few. I've heard from somebody else that she thinks there's a lot of ENFPs in show business.
I had an argument, a small argument, not an argument per se, but disagreement with an INFJ who thought that there's a lot of INFJs in acting, and I would say I think there's maybe a bit less than that. I think there's a lot more SPs and stuff. clean up.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with, again, socionics. It thinks that SE is just the blood and guts part of SE. It doesn't. Also, these people don't know enough about acting, in that the ability to be in the moment is very useful when you're acting, and you're just concentrating on your scene partner and being in the scene, and it very much helps when acting. But on my channel, not my channel. Lauren and Witzia are both ENFPs, and they're very good. So you don't have to be an ESFP to act well. It's, some people can just be naturals. I mean, I remember someone convincing me that she thought that Russell Crowe ESTP. I thought that can work. Right. So yeah, that could be SE with JI imaginative. So what I mean by that is SE with FI imaginative. So the ability to put yourself in the center of a character and feel what that character feels would work well with SE, the ability to stay in the moment. So it's sort of like SE creative with FI imaginative will be a powerful team. And then Kersey, art is indeed any activity in which successive actions are free variables rather than fixed constants. That's a very INTP sentence, isn't it, Jonathan?
Yeah. By the way, by JI, that just means introverted judging. So FI or TI is both JI.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's
Thanks for sweeping up after me, Jonathan. I appreciate it. When I get too abbreviational. If that's a word, abbreviational. Have I coined a new word? Let's check it out. Abbreviational. Because of the Jonathan's going to check, is abbreviational a word? Because of the emotional component of instincting, facial expressivity.
It's not a word. Congratulations.
Yay! My four is happy. Abbreviational. It's hard to do a new word, you know, because there's so many people out there. Because
I'm sure other people have used the word. It's just not.
Yeah, it's just not on the internet. Because of the emotion, it's like certain other things that are not on the internet, such as there used to be the Students' Union at Worcester University used to have the Shakin' Stevens bar, but if you look for it on the internet, it's not there. Because of the emotional component of instincting, facial expressivity may be involved here. Again, many thespians or show players are SEFX resemblers. And again, there, I think harmonizing is the adaptation to circumstances. So CTIH for when SEH combined with TIH. Very abbreviational. TI harmonizing for when SE harmonizing combined with TI harmonizing. Yeah, sort of like bringing in the different inputs into harmony. Looking for consistency. Yeah, that was what Shalina gave me that one for TE harmonizing, looking for consistency between facts and looking where facts come into alignment. Yeah, so I'll move on. We don't have that much time. But do you think I've done okay, Jonathan, in getting the main parts of SE sort of like captured by using subfunctions?
You're adequate, yes, you're fine.
Thank you. I'm adequate. Adequate is good. He's a lead one, so... Oh, and here we go. Now we have some examples. So, ESFP character. I'll let you read through that, Jonathan, and have your comments on it.
I'm not... Okay, I'm tempted to do an impression, but I think it would come off as racist.
Just do it in your own voice.
Days like this, I wish the stroke had... Blech. Days like this, I wish the stroke had struck harder. My old life hangs over me. I remember the tightness of the smoke in my lungs. I remember the bitterness of my coffee. I remember walking into the box.
One moment, I'll just say for everyone, that's the interrogation room.
It's just a room, right? Four walls, a mirror, a table, chairs, sitting in there. Crossing somebody like him, knowing I got him, that rush is better than nicotine, better than caffeine. It's the stroke of his job. If I couldn't remember, I wouldn't need it. I wouldn't want it.
Yeah. And so Jeff gave that as an example of an artisan, an ESFP doing an atypical job. An ESFP as a detective. But the reason why he does the job is to perform in the interrogation room, to get that confession.
Yeah.
And a lot of those characters are based on real people.
Yeah. I haven't seen the show, and I sadly haven't watched many of you and Jeff's reviews of the show. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. There's a heck of a lot of them, Jonathan. There's like 130 of them.
Yeah. So but from the little I've seen of him, it's always been a little strange that you type him as ESFP. But again, I haven't seen enough. I'm sure you make him.
Oh yeah, we go. There's lots of things with him, like that character where he comes from New York, very well educated by Jesuits, knows Latin and Greek. He's very dapper. He's actually less socially extroverted than ISFP Lewis, because Lewis is from the local community and he speaks more in African American vernacular English.
He comes across as ISTJ to me in the very little I've seen of him.
Also, he's played that character though. His next character was as an ISTJ. Frank Pembleton. I think you said you saw him in his second, because he's been playing an ISTJ character.
And Brooklyn.
So maybe you've been watching. You got mixed up between the two series.
Oh no, even before that, I'd say still that. I've seen him in other things as well.
He's very dapper. He's a dapper Dan. Frank Pembleton is a dapper Dan, but
the actor's name is Andre Bronner.
Yeah.
He usually plays SJs, I think.
Yeah, but like his character of Pembleton is a dapper Dan. He's like a like I said, he's one of those highly accomplished artisan.
Would you say he's like a normalizing ESFP then? A normalizing.
We do so many discussions with Jeff on this, like the little intricacies of temperament between artisans and guardians, because there are characters which show traits from both. And like Jeff would say that's an example. So for example, the ESTJ, the black ESTJ that's half Italian, Yaphet Kotto, wonderful actor. Barry Levinson, he's great at working with actors and actresses, like because he directed Rain Man. He's known. I think Barry Levinson he just knows how to direct people, and he had a big input into that series. I think he was the one that bought the rights to the book, Homicide, A Night on the Killing Street.
By the way, you're saying Yaphet Kotto's character is half Italian, or Yaphet Kotto the actor is?
No, the character is half
character.
Italian. It doesn't look like it,
yeah,
but he is in the program.
Pretty sure the actor's an African prince.
Yeah, because he could look Nigerian or something, or very sub-Saharan African. So, but they got away with it in the program. Yeah, he's supposed to be mixed race, but he's not. Well, what I mean is the character is. Anyway, my point is though that he, through experience, has learned to give his young charges their head, to do things their own way, because he's learned from it. Whereas his first instinct, but as soon as they get stuck, he's like, we got to do this, and this. And so, and he also gave an example of another artisan detective, this guy he comes out of retirement and he's a little bit racist and a little bit sexist, like, because this old guy that comes back in the 1990s. And it sort of reflected what it was like in the police department in Baltimore then, where there was a lot of what they called Irish American Catholic police officers, and then it became more of a different kind. They had more of the African American police detectives. Hope Jonathan wasn't offended by the Catholic comment. But it's just like in, say, New York, where there are a lot of Irish American police officers in New York. They used to say that every block in New York had a sort of like an Irish American police officer. That was sort of the stereotype of about, say, 100 years ago in New York, maybe longer ago than that. So, yeah, and so that character, Jeff said that he had learned to use tactics just from his experience. But yeah, that first instinct is guardian. So the next slide is, right, yeah, so this is an example of talking about ESTP, but it sort of shows how they think. So can you hear me, Jonathan?
Yes, I can hear you.
That could be a type interaction moment. Right, yeah, so this is to just get the really sort of like expeditious, everything's up for negotiation, no negotiable sort of point of view of ESTP, where it's like they have maximum flexibility because they don't have many principles. Contrast set. So I'm going to I'll write it as SETX, but I'll say it as set because it's quicker. Abbreviational. Set, which sees itself as flexible where there are no no-go areas and much depends on the present context. Thin, INFP, tends to see set as unprincipled and expedient. Set tends to see thin as holding limiting beliefs. To the set, if a belief is limiting or not useful to it, it's time to change the belief to something more effective. This is the mindset of Richard Bandler, the ESTP co-founder of NLP. But what he doesn't get is that a lot of these sort of beliefs have a lot of sort of feeling components, and they're closely held by people with stronger FI valuing. And so they're not as dispassionate in terms of giving up a belief and taking on another belief, whereas the ESTP can be more cold-hearted about it and just look at the utility of it. And they would plainly ask, what does that belief do for you? As if the beliefs are based purely around utility. And that's like an extreme example of how the ESTP can be so utilitarian, so bottom line in its thinking, where feeling is hardly a factor. So if you wish to highlight Jonathan, Hailey, feel free.
If you want, if anyone's wondering why I'm taking a can and putting it in a bottle, I don't know.
He's doing some SE. He's doing some SE. He just felt like it. Right, here we go. So do you agree with this bit, Jonathan?
Let's see.
About SETX?
What's this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was contrasting that to INFP, which can frequently have these principles which are part of a larger framework, and it's very difficult for INFP to move beyond a very important principle that is also going to be attached to self-image as well. And like, to a certain extent, if you ask who that, there's a question that the Vorlons ask in Babylon 5, who are you? And the shadows ask, what do you want? And if you were to ask an INFP, who are you? They're likely to mention what they believe in and their principles as part of that and what it represents and coming from their values. Whereas ESTP is much more utilitarian. Yeah. So there's something I can mention about this. Slight digression. So I read a paper by Daniel Katz. The way he organized it all, it made him look like an INTP, the way he wrote the article. And I call them the Sukev levels, about sort of like what are the purposes that different attitudes serve. And so I looked at, and I added one, and I call it the societal. And Jonathan was a little bit against this when I suggested it to him about the societal function. Because what I was sort of saying is that it's sort of something that's served in the background sort of not consciously. It's not like someone is deliberately going, oh, I'm going to be kind to this person so that this person is kind back to me, or the other people on looking will see me as a diamond geezer or whatever. I'm just saying that action is respected by the community, and the person that acts like that is like generous to other people, that there is a pro-societal benefit to that from the tribe. The tribe is going to see that person as a good team member who helps helps somebody else. And it's like, say, oh, he or she is the kind of person that will give you the shirt off their back when you're really in trouble. And the person is not thinking about a benefit, but you can see from a larger picture point of view that from the point of view of the tribe, there is a benefit to that kind of person being in the tribe, and that it helps the tribe. And so from a sort of an evolution point of view, there's a sort of a benefit to that kind of attitude, because that person tends to be liked more by other people. So it's like, it's not like it's done in a calculating way, which how sometimes it's almost, I suppose it's like Enneagram 2. When the Enneagram 2 is very healthy, they're not sort of doing it in a calculating way, are they, Jonathan? It's sort of like naturally helping and giving towards others, rather than doing it to trap people into dependency or to get the positive affirmation. It's just a natural expression of FE stuff. Yeah, so I was just sort of taking a step back and thinking, what purpose does this serve? Because it doesn't serve a purpose directly for the individual, but it does for the larger group and directly can benefit the individual. Any objections? Okay. And also the utilitarian, like people hold values like, it might be like, oh, why do you like that person? And someone might say, oh, because I like good looking people, and that person's good looking, or that person's funny, or that. It's like whatever they value, and it's like which boxes that person ticks, like your criteria. That's sort of like the utilitarian point of view of liking and your attitude towards something. It's, it's a little bit self-serving in that, why do you like it? Because it ticks this thing that I want. It ticks a box of a criterion that I like. So value that utilitarian point of view about why someone has a positive attitude towards something from a utilitarian point of view is quite self-serving. Then you've got Sukev, knowledge function. This is the way you wrote about the knowledge function. This is about the need for clarity and consistency. And I thought that's very INTP, where they have a positive attitude towards something that's very integrated and internally consistent, and there's clarity there, and they have a positive attitude towards something because of that. So you can have a lot of people that like socionics because it's internally consistent. And you could say that performs sort of the knowledge function, or rather the knowledge purpose of a positive attitude. Sukev, and then there's ego defensive. Certain attitudes might be evidence of an ego defensive function. And Katz was writing about this in the context of prejudice, racial prejudice in the 1950s, about ego defensive functions. And then also there was the value expressive functions. The value expressive function of people conveying an attitude because it has a value expressive component to it, of signaling who I am and what I stand for. And so it's a very interesting system. I thought it was nice little addition to typology, sort of the purposes which certain attitudes serve. And I just thought there was some utility in that. Again, the utility function, I like it because there's some utility function for writing in that, because I thought the word attitude was a little vague. I can go towards an opinion, which is a bit more concrete, because attitude is a little bit hard to pin down at times. Right then. So I just sort of crowbar that in. Yeah, a little bit on Logan Paul, I think, is the STP. And these are the core needs. And this, yeah, from Linda Bones' website. There we go. So have you seen any of Logan Paul, Jonathan? Are you aware of who he is?
I'm aware of who he is, yes, and aware of the controversies around him.
Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree, STP.
Do you know about him, Hailey?
I'm like Jonathan. I've heard the name, but I have no
Yeah.
idea what he does or anything
Yeah.
about him.
He's a YouTuber and who's become very famous. And he's done like boxing. I think it was controversial in the particular boxing. And now he's actually involved in wrestling. One of his more infamous videos was he was in Japan and he was recorded things and he walked into
I thought that was just funny. In a dark way. You probably found it funny as well, Jonathan, because you have a dark sense of humour.
yeah, this is crossing the line though. It's like basically he walked into a Japanese forest and this forest is notorious for people committing suicide in it. And he came across someone's actual body and he made a joke about it and uploaded the video. So we got a lot of heat for that. But that's the sort of thing you'd expect from a less mature EST.
Yeah.
Or apparently a less mature INTP.
Right. Yeah, again, let's go to core needs. Core needs are to have freedom to act without hindrance and to see a marked result from action. Sounds like SE. It's the artisan temperament. People of this temperament are highly value aesthetics, whether in nature or art. You could say aesthetics part of SE, part of SI. Usually concrete types tend to like aesthetics more than the abstract types, but just a general trend. Their energies are focused on skillful performance, variety, stimulation. If they have the skill, certainly variety. Even if they don't have the skill, variety, yeah. And stimulation, yeah. There's a bit of E7 in there. They tend towards pragmatic, utilitarian actions with a focus on technique, especially if they're STs. They trust their impulses and have a drive to act. You can see how much Kersey Berens is channeling. They learn best experientially, and when they see the relevance of what they're learning to what they're doing, they enjoy hands-on applied learning with a fast pace and freedom to explore. So yeah, it's very much bound up with the temperament. Oh yes, and this is Logan Paul's interaction style. Hailey.
I was just going to ask, what do you think the percentage of SPs are in the population?
Proportion of SPs. I personally think that the number of intuitives is vastly overrated. I mean, just on my experience, and like, I personally think that intuitives is like 10% at most. So I agree with Cozy with that. That's like there's not that many, and you might have more people testing as that. And I also have started to get to a little bit of a controversial point of view that with some people who are intuitive of the normalizing subtype, I'm sort of like, where's your intuition? Like, it's almost like all intuitive people are abstract, but not all abstract people are intuitive. And maybe they just don't care to show it.
You see, I think I don't know who said this, but some of the Myers-Briggs Institute, whatever, based on their data, they've estimated that most people are SJs followed by SPs, and intuitives are like a quarter of the population or something. Maybe less.
But in your experience, like in your environment, Jonathan, all the people you've met for your life, what percentage do you think are intuitives?
Most people in my life are definitely sensitive types.
Yeah.
There's maybe a handful of golf. I've got a big extended family with lots of aunts, uncles, cousins, and stuff. Only a handful of them, I think, might be intuitive.
Yeah, that's what I think. So it's more consistent with like 10%, isn't it?
Yeah. And there's even one or two who I think are intuitive that might be sensing.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, that also might be thing if they're from a certain social background, they might be harder to detect.
Yes.
Like, for example, I think a male idealist from a tough background might be hard to detect.
Yeah, tough Glaswegian Scottish.
You know what I mean, Jonathan? Like, if someone's not from a proper tough Glaswegian background and say they're an INFP, they're not going to present as like your stereotype of an INFP. They're going to sort of learn to create a persona to sort of hide it a bit.
That's pretty true for my INFP friend. I feel that's the case with him. With me, he'll open up one-on-one, but yeah. That's very interesting.
Gender role socialization. It's very important. It's just like, say, an Italian INTJ is probably going to be a little bit more expressive than, say, a Scottish INTJ. Just because the Italian culture values FE so much. Getting stuff accomplished through people. Like, again, it's this sort of in charge, what Kersey would say, initiating, preemptive initiation. Oh, right, okay. Part of this is based on himself, because this actor was a stand-up comedian in the North, and the character is based on a real person as well. And again, I just think I just use these traits because I think they're sort of artisan-y and ESTP. First rule of comedy, you must have reality. And then ESFJ woman, ESTP man, you behave as though you're still in the war and every day might be your last. And then him, that's him. But when a large part of a man's life has been constant uncertainty, it's hard to accept that knobbly knees competitions are now the most important thing in a man's day. He wants excitement. Again, this is about the expediency. I thought it would take days to organize. No, not Ted Bovis. When I move, I move. The expediency. If you want something to get done really quickly, that's not overly complex, but if you want it done quickly, ESTP is. It's like that. When I move, I move. Point of pride for ESTP is.
Does that also refer to things that they don't necessarily want to be doing? They want to get it done ASAP.
Maybe. They might need somebody, and I think Kersey wrote that they can get it done, but they might need somebody else to clean up the details. But the ESTP can get stuff done. I mean, like, take necessary actions quickly, like drastic actions, and get it done before someone has the time to organize. It's like Trump with like stuff that was done too quickly in his presidency, and it's like they had to roll it back because it went out too quick. It was like, I'm just gonna listen to this. Yeah, again, this is him using tactics against Joe Maplin. So listen to this. You take them 6 horses that Joe Maplin wants to get rid of, because part of the plot is that they want to take 6 horses and have them killed in the knacker's yard. But what he does is he comes up with a tactic to help his friend Fred Quilly. And you put them in a disused old tennis court. We tell the papers that Joe Maplin's starting a home for retired horses. He won't deny it. He wants the world to think he's warm-hearted and generous. I just thought that was funny. What's the STP fund? It's a fund for people like me. Gladys, so long as a job gets done, what does it matter who does it? Again, it's like he's saying that. Again, ESTP kind of, as long as it gets done, doesn't matter how it's done. Or it's like Jeff said about his ESTP boss. I don't care how you do it, just get it done. And then aggressor. Right, Jonathan, I'd like you to tell me where it goes right and where it goes wrong.
Can you zoom in
about this romance style stuff.
Can you zoom in a bit?
Oh, okay. I'll do that in a moment. I've got the sun really coming into me. That's better. I'll do it for this bit here, and then when you've read this, I'll move it up. Oh yeah. So people, that black circle is a symbol meaning SE.
Yeah.
And the white triangle is NI, which actually is a good symbol for NI because you see quite a lot of the eye in a triangle.
Okay.
Right. So either of you going weak at the knees with this sort of reading about this? Thinking, oh, I'd like some of that.
Maybe bits, but not all of it.
Ooh, which bits, Hailey? Make you go weak at the knees.
The first one, no doubts about their interest in the person, not prone to reveal that interest, or excuse me, not prone to hesitation about revealing the interest. Not so much the third one, not the fourth,
This
not the fifth.
this reminds me of years ago. I was in Facebook in a group, and an ESTP woman was complaining, "Why are all the INFJs gay? Why are there no straight?" And I said, "I'm a straight INFJ," and immediately she sent me a friend request and messaged me. So
And
nothing.
and nothing developed.
I didn't reply. I didn't accept it.
Oh, Jonathan!
I know.
You could have been in there.
Yeah. She was in America, I think. So.
Okay, fair enough. Practicality. Who says INFJs don't have TE?
To be fair, I've known, apart from you, Jonathan, I've known two other INFJ guys, and they both, it's not that you can't be straight and this way, but I can see how other people might assume that they are gay. They're very, very feminine at times.
Oh no, I do know gay INFJs. Just I'm just not one of them.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not the sixth. Yeah, so most of these, no. The first two, I don't mind. The rest of them, absolutely not.
Yeah, I would push back against some of this if it happened. It hasn't really happened, sadly.
Oh, go ahead.
So I'm thinking what I'd like to get out of both of you is which ones do you think are too much, an exaggeration or a bit of a caricature, or what's really
I know
accurate?
I've definitely seen people who would meet all this. I wouldn't say it's all exaggerations. Like obviously some SPs will fit this perfectly, and some SPs less so. But,
I suppose another way of looking about it is what I'm sort of asking is, of these traits, which ones do you like and dislike?
I like the first.
Right.
I like the second. Not a fan of the third. I don't hate it, but I'm not a fan. The fourth, I'm not a fan. The next one needs to feel.
So one moment. So you're not attracted towards toughness?
Not in a romantic interaction. I mean, now define romantic interaction. I mean, is this one-on-one, heart-to-heart, or are we talking like, getting it on? Like, what are we talking about here? Because that matters too.
I think it's like the initial stages, like in this case, an SP sees someone and decides they want them. And this is how they go about starting the relationship.
How would we define toughness? Like, give me an example.
Well, more toughness versus tenderness. So
yeah, but like coming on strongly, like, hey, give me your number. I'm taking you out tomorrow night. Like,
yeah, like can you tolerate their behavior? Can you put up with them? Can you push back against them if necessary? Are you a pushover? That sort of thing.
Okay, so yeah, I guess I would like a little bit of that, as long as it's not done in a superior, demeaning, sarcastic, bitchy way.
You see,
but if it was like a playful way, then yeah.
What I would say about socionics though here is that because they are defining SE too much towards the power aspect, I would say, well, in Jonathan's, so we could say that INTJs, they're attracted towards ESFP. ESFP is a collaborator, so they're not as tough in a directive way. They are more, ESFP is more the ability to resist being controlled. And even Victor has it like that, where he has power sensing of subordination for ESTP and power sensing of resistance for ESFP.
By the
And
way,
so,
did Victor write this?
no, it's on Wikisocion, but they probably took it from his work about.
I know he was mentioned.
It was he that came up with romance styles.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if this is like an INTP's take on.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like we tend to have a very sort of cartoonish view of SE.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it rubs us up the wrong way.
Hmm.
Again, this emphasis. So, for example, I remember when I did a video with, and she's known as this on YouTube. That's why I give out her surname, Alexis Kingsley. And what she found attractive about ESFP was and I think that maybe INTJ females are more attracted towards the SE of, say, of a musician, the more than the more assertive kind of SE. There's like a different kind of SE. Because I wonder if INTJ females are attracted towards male musicians. That a different kind of SE, the more like ESFP kind of SE rather than ESTP SE. She herself finds male musicians very attractive.
That's funny because one of the very first people I typed, I think, was an INTJ, and one of their, at the time, they were in a relationship with someone who might have been an ESFP, and they was really into music, and the music critic. So could be wrong.
Yeah, because they also like FI. So INTJ is going to like someone with SE and FI. And the way Dario describes SE, and it's like he's fantasizing about his duel. the way because he talks about stylishness and grace, and it's like you know what I mean. So it's different from that. What the INFJ likes will be different from what the INTJ likes, sort of thing. And again, because Socionics defines SE purely as the SEA subfunction, the assertive subfunction, ESFP is not as assertive. They can be very resistant if someone tries to control them, but they're not as, because again, it's an interaction style thing. ESFPs are get things going. They are collaborative. ESTPs are more directive. Yeah, so I think that might come into it. So any other comments before I move on? Because let's see how many more slides I have. Oh, you're beast. I'm only about 40% done.
No, well, I think Hailey's got to go in 20 minutes. So
Right, okay. So is that apparently this is what they think of other romance styles, childlikes, and then because we've only got that 20 minutes, I'm gonna have to sort of like speed on a bit. Sorry. Again, I'd persuade Khrushchev to join the Conservative Party. There's your big C, Jonathan.
yeah,
Like pride in his role as a sort of a promoter role, con man role.
yeah.
Persuade Khrushchev to join.
Again, if people have no idea what this means, Khrushchev's the leader.
It's set in 1960.
Yeah, Khrushchev was the leader of Soviet Russia. He was obviously very communist.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of truth in this about ESTP. Yeah, Transformers. It's like I said before, I don't know who did this, but the way that stuff is misspelled, it's like comedically genius. It's like, how can I misspell this in a funny way, sort of thing.
I was in a used DVD shop earlier today, and they were selling a box of like the complete original Transformers series cartoon. I kind of regret not getting it.
Is it like that?
Not like that, like a smaller.
Because I've got the one like that, and it's like one flipping disc in each case, and it's like it takes up a lot of space.
No, this was like.
Here we go.
DVD box.
Look at this. Logan Paul. It's like this is the thing with the SCPs, is they can act in a way that belies their intelligence. Like, how many people would have thought that he majored in industrial engineering at Ohio University before dropping out in 2014?
Well, I think they would have thought they dropped out, but
yeah. But that point though, that ESTPs can act like that because they just act impulsively. It's like it's why they can be so hard to predict, because sometimes they don't use their brain, and then they can be very smart. So it's like you can't predict. Well, if he's smart, he'll do this, but is he in the mood for being smart today? It depends. You know what I mean? It's ESTPs are very hard to predict, so that is an advantage for them. If you're trying to work out what your ESTP opponent's going to do, it depends if they're focused. If they're focused, they can be smart. If they don't focus, they can do dumb actions because they just feel like doing something else.
You can't predict them because even they don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like it's very difficult to beat. Very difficult to beat. And here's a bit. He said he had brain damage. I had holes in my brain, and he said the bit where I can't empathize.
So he's basically saying he's a psychopath.
Vulnerable function. And again, this is a bit about poor FI and ESTP, but I've got to move on.
And ENTP. So
and yes, quite right, Jonathan.
Yeah,
quite
not
right.
really. Not really about Artisans or SE in general, more like
ESTP. Thank you for sweeping up after me. Thank you. So that's the ENTP, folks. ILE, intuitive, logical extrovert, and sensory logical extrovert or extrotem. And then a bit on weak FI in ESTPs. People can pause that, look at it. And then here, like an ESTP point of view, people don't want the truth. They don't want to hear that Joe Maplin's a crook. But it's all lies. That doesn't matter, Spike. For 10 grand, I'd put them to sleep with the club. Expedient. Quite a lot of women go for Rotters. That's why I do so well.
I was reading. I just bought a book on the Nuremberg trials, and it's specifically.
Yes, I think that Goering is ESTP. Over to John.
Yes, it's a set of interviews with all of the accused and someone that says by the psychiatrist. So yeah, you get Hermann Goering, second in command of the Nazi Germany, and very much artisan mentality and ESTP-ish.
It's like I've had a good 12 years because it's like just been hedonistic. I wrote this sketch. I don't know if ever it's going to get performed. I wrote this sketch about Hermann Goering, and I put all this detail in that he expected people when they visited his parties to give him artwork or a statue or a bar of gold.
There were times I wondered if he's ESFP or ESTP because he was a bit more. At times, he was a bit more emotionally expecting ESTP to be, and it was more. There was a lot of fancy clothes and stuff, and he said that he liked artwork because he liked being surrounded by beautiful things and stuff. Yeah.
And he had that train set as well at Cowan Hall. He had a huge train set in the attic. So this is Spike's a Guardian. You're a bit of a cad, perhaps, but I've noticed you do some quite nice things. And then Dario's chapters. So SI, stabilizing with a predictable standard, exploring the emerging patterns. NE, transforming with a meta perspective. It's like that's the NI one. That's a bit iffy, that chapter. Sorry, Dario, you've got to be truthful. Measuring and constructing for progress. TE, gaining leverage through a framework. That's a TJ's version of TI, as if TI has to always be useful. Gaining leverage. Building trust through giving relationships, FE, central to who you are, FI. That's Dario's book. I think you've got that book, Jonathan. It's quite a good book. Oh yeah, so little things I showed to people before. Being impulsive is being alive. It can be about power, ESTP, but it's always about freedom. That's a quote from Jeff. And then also I think, yeah, win the moment. ESTPs are looking to win the moment. And I'll tell you something, there was a book about being in prison that the writers of Porridge read, and the book talked about, and the prisoner who wrote the book said that what helped to get through his time was looking for little victories against the guards. Little victories, and that sort of fits this win the moment part. And then Jeff objected, like, you've done that as a quote, Ben, but he never actually said that. I will not be scheduled, but it's like part of that ethos. That might be in the real quote. Whatever we do the hell out of it. But the I will not be scheduled isn't an actual quote. It's like an imagined quote, but that one's not by Jeff. That one's probably from Jeff. Live in the now, variety is the spice of life. Dario, take tangible action relevant to the moment and current situation. Trust their impulses and have a drive to action. Learn best experientially when they... That was in the... So that's from the Dario book, and that's in that Beren's website thingy. Yeah, concrete word usage, hands-on, applied learning, all that kind of stuff. And, right. Oh, yes. Not much time left. Instinct. So, yes, Dibley. Especially that stuff that's underlined. I think that when he's talking about instinct here, it sounds like SE. And so, especially this, I think he was a very good writer, Dibley. He was actually a journalist by trade, Dibley, and he sort of wrote this book on instinct and intuition as a sort of a sideline. But he's got some very well written lines in it. By a quite separate instinct, you may turn a deaf ear to reason and intuition and act in some ill-considered but immediately efficient. That's what I was saying about Ted Bovey saying, when I act, but it's immediately efficient, it's tactical. Alternatively, the same process may take place in a more sudden and unexpected manner when an individual, before his reason's time to work or his intuition to produce intelligible results, may have been moved to summary action more promptly still by unconscious instinct. And then all the stuff in like Violet is, yeah, you can see there, intuition and instinct. Have I got any other aspects? Right. Instinct is a privileged form of intelligence, not exposing its processes, but handing its ready-made results to the practical, efficient, willing, and motor self for use in competition with the more formal and pretentious dictates of the slower-moving intellect. And then stuff about contrasting intuition. We can't get in. Obscure relations, probably like, you know about them, Ben, obscure relations. You make them all the while. Thinking, however, right, okay, it's unconscious elements of instinct. Yeah, the optic thalamus. So, yeah, that's about the limbic system. And I think he's right about that. Many varieties of instinct. Yeah, that's something that can be looked into. Here we go. Lastly, is there in effect a single faculty of instinct to balance the faculties of reason and intuition? Right. Okay, more on instinct. Impulses coming from unconscious motive. Animals. Here we go. We can also build up a strong inferences from bodily structure of animals and men, but we know next to nothing about the mental side of instinct. Is it mixed up with both the unconscious reflex and with conscious emotion? We do not yet really know whether it is constituted of thought or of feeling or of both. And then here, strong physical relations of instinct. Yeah, so it gets a bit involved, but contrasted, because I do think instinct is a part of SE and SI. It's like an artisan instinct, because that like drive for impulse and action, it's all there in the mix.
I do want to say, I think we spent a lot of time on ESFPs and ESTPs in this video, and not a lot on ISFPs and ISTPs. And they'll be similar, but they'll be
Be
a bit
less.
more, bit more reserved,
subdued.
bit more
Yeah.
cautious.
Yeah.
Slightly more guardian.
Now, I did that in pink because I like the word perplexities. And then here he's being a bit sarcastic about intuition. About, well, I'm not supposed sarcastic, but poking fun at intuition. About, in the way that people define intuition. There is no limit that is not attainable from the heights of inspiration at its base to the summit of the marvels of ecstatic vision. Everything is possible there. And it's like intuition can do anything. The resources of language and the capacity of memory limit what can be retained and the little that can be communicated to others. It's like me when I was doing all those NI videos with you. It's like, oh, it's this amazing thing, but I can't tell you how it works. The inward confidence and security that remain are indescribable and the testimony of those who have experienced the loftiest flights above reflection and thought, don't I know it? I kept on asking you for examples. Yeah, but you did quite well. It's just that we got there in the end. Oh, perception. Yeah, perception's been different. Why I don't like calling it perception? Because this is what actual perception is. Yeah. The gathering is the organization, identification, and interpretation of sensory information in order to represent and understand the presented information or environment. So, in other words, thought is involved in perception. It's not just sensor. And so, Van der Hoop said that because he put emotion into instinct, he said, I can no longer see this as a perceiving function. And anyway, thought is involved in perception. So this is why I call them irrational functions rather than perceiving functions. And the cognitive psychology people probably agree with Van der Hoop that thinking is involved in perception. It's a quarter of cognitive psychology. And so I don't like, say, SE and SI being called perception. They're irrational functions rather than perceiving functions in my mind. Is there something more about, oh, the limbic system? Yeah. This idea of emotion coming from the limbic system first, was it? From a more biological standpoint, the brain's limbic system operates as the main control layer for response to certain stimuli, including a variety of instinctual behavior. The limbic system processes external stimuli related to emotions, social activity, motivation, which propagates a behavioral response. Some behaviors include maternal care, aggression, defense, social hierarchy, and then there's also like sexual attraction as well. And like, which mediates through the senses. Oh, this is too much to get into. This is like where I was doing like, I was trying to use Kersey dichotomies to isolate functions, but it would be an event in itself, and it's very sort of involved. Like double utilitarian, and then NTP single utilitarian, and sort of like it could be done, but this is not the time. And then the bit on instinct, yeah. So he mentioned the optic thalamus, but this part of the brain, and some research has shown that information can go to here before it actually, and people can respond before it actually goes to the posh part of the brain, the cerebral cortices, because there's two of them. So here we go. The human forebrain contains a large number of important structures. The thalamus is a kind of communication center which receives input from the eyes, ears, skin, and other sensory organs. It also modulates the activity of the cortex as a whole. The hypothalamus is a small but very complex structure engaged in control of the 4 Fs. And I'm glad he put fleeing rather than flying. Feeding, fighting, fleeing, and fornicating, as well as of temperature regulation, sleep, and the expression of emotion. So, the limbic system began as a small brain, emotional processes. So emotion bound up with the limbic system. Because Van der Hoop made that distinction between feeling and emotion. Again, here, emotions and memories compete with present circumstances and thoughts for control of behavior. And then he does a bit about, oh, what's this bit about? Oh, yeah, this is a bit about, these are some of the features of instinct. Okay. This is where he's saying that it's not perception. You've got the Gestalt in there. Single sensory field, that it's more than just sensing. Impossible to make clear separation. Oh yeah, so that's about the emotion, that it's impossible to separate. Sometimes it's impossible to separate the emotional reaction from the sensation. Feel and tone, and there's that book on instincts. I got the book. It's called Instinct in Man. 1917, before feminism. Emotional, popular feminism anyway. Emotional reactions to, and then this urge to act. Emotional reactions to sensation are frequently accompanied by an impulse to act. There we go. SE, or of habit, guardians. Our conscious mind, this may assume various forms, e.g. that of a vague inclination to do something, act on impulse, or of a strong impulsive drive towards certain acts, or they may arise a certain mode of behavior, determined more or less by habit. And then there was a bit about the kind of knowing that is associated with instinct. And he gave an example of some sportsmen communicating with each other. So I'll let you take that in. When listening to sportsmen carrying on endless conversations concerning the details of their hobby, one gets the impression that they are speaking in terms of some common experience. Although they would find it difficult to convey this experience to an outsider, they are conscious enough of it themselves. It is impossible to say that this form of knowing is chaotic. It is controlled by fixed associations of sensation and action. The original instinctual interest lent into things their primary meaning has led to further experiences, and as a result of which fresh emphases in the field of sensation have provided a secondary meaning, and these points attracting special attention are linked up by being associated together in practice. So yes, Vanderhoek INTP. And maybe the woman that translated in there might have been as well. Traits of the artisan temperament. Again, the hedonic part. I'm going back to Plato, artisan. Yes, sanguine. Happy-go-lucky, I suppose. Changeable, innovative, aesthetic, and exploitative. Ooh, he might have been INTP. He might not have been like artisans. Probing, hoarding, scheduling, traditional, innovative, industrious. Right, what have we got? What have we got left? Oh, we did this table before. People could think about that themselves. What's this? Oh yeah, ask NI DOMs what they find attractive about SE DOMs, and that will help to put those features in SE. I think that's ESFP. Yeah, ESFP's brain. Oh yes. Yeah, like how ESFP uses FE is, so a lot of these traits you could say ESFJ also does, like radiate warmth, lift others' spirits, charming them, but these are all used as a tool to serve these ends. And a lot of ESFP is like attention. So goals and traits common to all artisans, and then these specific to ESFP. I think. Oh, SFP, sorry, performers and composers. Pleasure-seeking, generosity, kindness, spontaneous generosity. So he gave the example of Frank Sinatra sending someone a blank check in case you need it. And he also, I think, either him or Elvis seeing a woman who liked his car and then giving her the car and then buying a new one, something like that, taking her and just giving her a car because she liked the car, just like spontaneous moments of generosity. Bits of the profile performance. Okay, so this is Kurz's ESFP on the new website, so it may have been written by Eddie Kim. Trump. there's just some bits about Trump that, like, some of it's like gilding the lily. Right, but there's some bits there. He doesn't mind the craziness, the drama, or the difficulty as long as his end goal is in sight. He will enjoy it. But again, this is coming from Priebus at the time, who was like working for him, and so he might be doing a bit of polishing on there. NLP stuff. Oh yes, 3-minute seminar. Because NLP created by two STPs, ESTP and an ISTP. So 3-minute seminar of NLP from an STP point of view. Know what you want, be alert, be flexible. So the outcome, acuity, flexibility. So stay focused on, use your senses, be adaptable, be alert, and keep your senses open so that you notice what you are getting. That part of SE. Flexibility. Keep changing what you do until you get what you want. Know what you want and have a clear idea of your outcome in any situation. So it's interesting to know how the really smart STPs think, and also because they sort of put it out there, these guys, because like John Grinder, ISTP, did good stuff with language in NLP because he's got a background in linguistics. And so he actually came up with a very good model of how hypnosis works based on language patterns. And most hypnotists now use the Erickson model, the Milton model of hypnosis. And I've looked for a book and I've started to go under. So there's something to it. Hemingway, yes. Yeah, he was very SE, Hemingway. Very SE. Oh, there's a joke about that. Dennis Miller. Jeff thinks he's ENTJ. I don't disagree. And he did a joke about Hemingway, about somebody on an aeroplane being noisy and annoying everybody else. He said he was like an older Hemingway, but with a twist. Everybody else felt like blowing their brains out.
Uh-huh.
But I like the fact that we put with a twist because Hemingway was known for having twists in his work. So I sort of like that extra. He does obscure references, does Dennis Miller. Oh yeah, then I did all this stuff about Artisan temperament. Next slide. Oh yes, this song. I think this song is like so SE. This is from the end of the Transformers movie. Stan Bush, you've got the touch, you've got the power.
Yeah.
You're a winner. You got the move, you got the rules, you know the streets, you break the rules, take the heat, you're nobody's fool. So like your SE Dons are going to be thinking, yeah, that sounds good to me. You're at your best. They would like somebody to, I remember one guy I saw on Waters World, and he asked him, what do you want? And he said, I want to be that guy that everybody else is talking about. And I thought, that's an ESFP. Especially if they're talking about them in a good way. Yeah. The best when the going gets tough, going gets rough. You've been put to the test, but it's never enough. So it's like, this is like a song about SE. And N.I. Don could have written this about what they find hot about SE. You've got the touch, you've got the power, and who's breaking loose right behind the storm. You've got the heart, you've got the motion. You know, when things are getting tough, you've got the touch. You never bend, you never break. You seem to know just what it takes. You're a fighter. So you can say like SE assertive. It's in the blood, it's in the will, it's in the mighty hands of steel. When you're standing your ground, you never get hit. When your back's to the wall, you're going to fight to the end and you're taking it all. You're fighting fire with power, you know, you've got the touch. So it's all SE, isn't it? To me, that's like SE is shot. That song is shot through with SE. Oh, yes. Artisan astronauts. They weren't happy when one of them took a brassiere into space. This was the item Julian Scheer referred to when we were in the blockhouse. It did occur, and subsequent to my learning about it, I asked Dave Staten to call it to the flight crew's attention and to caution them about such antics in future.
What's a brassiere?
A bra.
Oh,
Right.
Yeah, but why? Why did he? Why?
What?
Yeah.
Why did I take it into space? Because they're STPs. That's why. It's the sort of things they do. Like in that environment where there's a load of ST. It's like with when we talk about Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon is already going to be surrounded by a lot of SE amongst all those other wrestlers, and it's like people in the military. There's a lot of SE going around there, and these are the kind of jockish humor that they would do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not surprised. Young ESTP males, like, and even if they're like 40, they still get like that. Usually, astronauts in those days were quite old because they wanted to use test pilots who sort of knew what they were doing and have a track record. So the astronauts probably be in their 40s, early 40s, the first ones. Although Gagarin was young. Actually, I'll take that back. Gagarin was young, but he was a fighter pilot. He had a tactical intellect. Again, this is as close as Kersey's going to get to functions. His system of intellects. It's because he's got because they do correlate to functions. At him, Shavens, right? Yeah. So it's like I did it like Hailey's giving a bit of overtime or 9 minutes. Like so, promoting and crafting is like SE with TI. It's like because it's like you're operating with objects expediently, and this is with people, so it's like SE with FI, and you can sort of see that in composing. Like you've got your feelings in there, and you've got how stuff sounds. Like you sort of like you can see what it is drawing on. That the role of composer would draw on the sensory. Because a lot of songs, like the lyrics, don't mean that much, but they sound good on a surface level. Whereas I want more meaning. Again, improvising flexibility, and then we have a bit from Tanks Born in Russia. This guy is very ESTP, this one. And again, I think that's what they say, when you're smart, you're cunning. I think an ESTP might say that. When you're smart, you're cunning. Because he asked him, how did you get here? Because he forced himself into that part of the workshop. And it's not a very good propaganda channel, RT, when they do these documentaries, because they just make them all look like a bunch of lazy artisans. And there's even a bit where you're supposed to be working, not picking up chicks. There's a bit in one of the episodes. Remember, I did that with you, Hailey, when I did the video on the man, the STJ man, Yuri Gatan, and he was complaining about these two. Right, General George Patton. I think this is ESTPs. If everyone's thinking alike, someone isn't thinking. That's part of that utilitarian thinking. So you've got that SE where you're going to challenge somebody, and you've got that TI, which I will admit is arrogant. TI is arrogant. TI is arrogant because it's like, oh, do it my way. What I think is right. Right, and then here, Trump. Why would I call China a currency manipulator when we're working with us on the North Korean problem? We'll see what happens. Unpredictable, magnetic. So that's probably about ESTPs. Yeah, promoters. Oh, yes. Just my idea of like how you can get certain things. Linguistically, just what they sound like. But for SE, visuospatial. That will help. Visuospatial. Bodily kinesthetic. Maybe a bit with music. But SE can be involved in all of these three. I like how SI has its own one. Like they added this, the 8th one, they added it because it used to be the 7 kinds of intelligence. And this is like, they've got obviously the like, the libertarians might say, the libertarians and conservatives might say, well, what about money intelligence? What about being smart with money? You've put your eco one in there. What about money in there? A head for figures, that sort of thing. Oh, yes, this is important. Very important. Dario. Because eventually I got permission from him about 2 or 3 years later to make it public. For sensing types, the tangible outer world has a special relevance because they are strongly anchored or interested in tangible reality. For them, the line between the inner and outer worlds is distinct. Thus, for sensing types, the function that is oriented to the outer world be it SE, TE, or FE, is really crucial. In contrast, for intuiting types, the conceptual inner world has a special relevance because they enjoy exploring ideas, possibilities, metaphors, potentials, theories, etc., all mental abstractions. For them, the line between the real world and conceptual world is fuzzy. Thus, for intuiting types, the function pairs, the nature of the psychological cognition itself is primarily important. So like I said, for intuitive types, or abstract types, it's more about the interpretation and the cognition. And for the concrete types, it's more about the actual instinct is more important, how they are perceiving the world. Again here, and then this is just a bit on role enactment and function pairs. Like SE and TI would go towards expediency, like analyze the situation and act quickly. The ability to weigh a situation up and act quickly in that moment. So you got SE with TI, and then SE and FI with this. So it's a sort of correlate to functions on the social plane that you can say, well, Kersey doesn't do functions, but these roles correlate to these combinations, especially with these ones. Like SI and FE, you're supplying people with goods for other people. You're doing it out of kindness, actively kind, beneficent. So you can really see that and contrast that FE with NFJ FE, which is about using it with NI and developing people and looking after their psychological health rather than their physical health. So you can see these correlates between the Kersey intellects, which get broken down into 4 roles. So diplomatic enabling gets broken down into mentoring and mediating, and then these 4 roles. And then Kersey would say that naturally the ENFJ is predisposed to this role of the initiating educator, because the role is directive and expressive and is about diplomatic enabling, and that type is also directive and expressive, and it's like there's a hand and glove where the type is the hand and the role is the glove. Hand fits the glove. So
I can hear static.
yeah, well, we're near the end. We are near the end. Oh, we did that bit. No, there's a different bit. This is a different. We're almost near the end. That's it. We're in the home straight. We're in the home straight. So a bit of Vanderhoop on because I have begun to regard emotion as an expression of instinct. I was no longer able to accept Jung's form because I'm an INTP and I will think for myself. No longer to accept Jung's formulation of the function of perception. Emotional reactions are immediately bound up with sensations. So-called feeling tone. So-called feeling tone together with reactions of liking and disliking thus form with sensation a psychological entity, and that is the instinct. It's all connected together, so it's like Kersey not wanting to separate it out. In studying, and so this is talking about SE DOMs, the sensation types. In studying their mode of adaptation, I saw in fact more and more clearly that they were not guided exclusively by their sensations, but by their sensations coupled with... This was like an eye-opener for me. I got dissimilated by Vanderhoop. Usually there's assimilation where you take what from other people and sort of fit it into what you already know. But what he did is he changed the way I thought. He changed me rather... So it's sort of like the opposite of confirmation bias. Wait, I learned something and it changed my model. It was like a paradigm shift. And I thought, bloody hell, he's right. But I think one of the reasons why I changed this is I could see, oh, that fits temperament better. So it made it more consistent. And I asked David Mark Kersey, the son of David West Kersey, who's now rest in peace, if his father ever read this book, Conscious Orientation by Vanderhoop. And it looks like he never read it, unfortunately. I think that if he did, he would have liked it a lot more than Psychological Types, because basically they're very close on instinct. And the SI Dom profile, it reads like a Kersey Guardian. It talks about the conservative farmer that cares for his animals and does everything in the same old way and looks towards an authority figures for opinions. Coupled with their emotional reactions there too, and further by their instinctual needs as well. It seemed therefore incorrect to me to regard sensation as the only characteristic factor in this function. Therefore, I'm going to rename it instinct. Adaptation here governed by emphases in regard to emotion and attention in the field of sensations, and that action is also directed by details of a concrete kind. So, empirical or sensory instinctive. I do this initialism, seek, sensation, emotion, action, and sensory motor know-how all bound up together. And one of the final slides. Here we go. In intuitive experience, there is spontaneous insight into the relation of a certain group of facts, especially if you're an NE type, writing this definition, as a result of which they assume added significance. This is something quite different from the practical, instinctive knowledge which results from emphases in sensation. Then there's a bit here. We now see the sphere of conscious instinctual experience as a mode of conscious orientation, covering various items which nevertheless appear to us coupled with their emotional and behavior reactions thereto as part of a single experience, bringing with it a practical form of knowledge, inseparable from the sensations involved. Emotional reactions to sensations are frequently accompanied by an impulse to act. In our conscious mind, they may assume various forms, e.g. that of a vague inclination to do something, or of a strong impulsive drive towards certain acts, which I say is SE, or there may arise a certain mode of behavior determined more or less by habit, which I say is SI. Know-how. It is impossible to say that this form of knowledge is chaotic. It is controlled by fixed associations of sensation and action. The original instinctual interest leading to things, their primary meaning, has led to further... We sort of went over this before when we went through that chapter. Right, here we go. What we got? The Guardians. SPs. What we got? SPs up here. SPs in green? In green? That should be idealists. Live for physical experience, artists, dancers, firemen, frequently. This is Bovis talking about ESFJ Gladys marrying ESTP Clive. She'd be the making of him because she's got a bit of go about her. Oh yeah, this is just him lying as a tool. They've got kids with them. They're him saying they're apprentice burglars. In spite of the appalling, he's INTP. So initially, Gladys was after him, the INTP college professor. In spite of your appalling taste, Ted, you did a wonderful job. Are we at the beginning? Yes, we're at the beginning. So there we go. Thank you, Hailey, for giving me a little bit of extra time. We got it all done.
Yes.
Any
Wonderful.
questions about
that was
SE?
great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna go here in about 2 minutes, but I did have a question. As always, I want to know. So, what are the primary E types for SC, DOMs, and SPs?
What?
Or am I asking an off limit?
Well, no, it was just said. Jonathan, she's just asking about Enneagram types. I would say SE DOMs are very likely to be 7.
They're usually, for ESTPs, it's usually 3, 6, 7, or 8. For ESFPs, it's usually 2, 6, 7, or 8.
Yeah,
I think. And usually there's 7 there either as a core or a fixation or as a wing. So there's usually some kind of 7 in the EPs. If it's the ISPs, that's usually 6 and 9. With ISFPs, maybe 4, 6, and 9, and with ISTPs, maybe 5, 6, and 9. But usually 6 and 9 more common.
Yeah, so someone like Prince, like Sabrina agrees that Prince likely an Enneagram 4, and that because she was saying that she avenged because she didn't because of his 4-ness, he looked a bit INFP-ish, but she came down on, and she's read a lot of books. She's read his autobiographies. Like she knows a lot about Prince. She really liked Prince when she was younger, and she still likes Prince. So she says, yeah, she thinks Prince, ISFP, and Enneagram 4, the Prince.
Yeah. Catherine was writing about Prince and Michael Jackson on her website, and she said that apparently Prince once thought about running Michael Jackson down with his car.
Goodness me.
He was out, he was in his car, he saw Michael Jackson, and he thought, run down. Or maybe even try, I don't know.
I mean, some of the more accomplished SE DOMs are likely to have 3 in there just because they are so driven, and they might have some behaviors that are sort of atypical of the sort of the cliche of SE DOMs, but it might be like
Well,
I'll just say that their craft they take very seriously and very professional about their craft, but in other areas they might be a bit slacker and more hedonistic.
Yeah. Type 3 ESTP are usually more polished and professional.
Yeah.
And that more strained, subdued as they're pursuing their mission. With I mean, 2s and 4s can be very ambitious as well, and they're driven.
It's like, I'll just say it's like Damon Gray. What is he, 835 or 853? And he will present as a more polished ESTP. And people will see him as ENTJ, but every now and then when he's hanging out with his associates on his YouTube channel, he'll go into ESTP mode and sort of break his cover.
Since we brought up Vince McMahon earlier and Donald Trump, I will say you do find, like Donald Trump, famously, he was involved in wrestling. He never actually wrestled himself, but he was involved in storylines, and you do find footage of him and Vince McMahon.
Yeah, that was that match. Yes, yeah, I remember the hair match. The hair match.
Yeah, they never wrestled themselves, but they had representatives to wrestle at this.
But they did have a bit though where they did a bit of action where Trump was punching, fake punching Vince McMahon outside the ring.
Yeah. Basically, I typed Donald Trump as a type 8 and I typed Vince McMahon as a counterphobic 6, and you can see the differences in their mannerisms.
Yeah.
Like, Vince definitely changes who he is depending on the situation, depending on the moment. He's more shy and subdued, especially in older stuff. Then he shows up his maniacal side, then he shows kind of professional side and stuff. Whereas Donald Trump is pretty much the exact same person he's always been.
I agree with Catherine that some counterphobic 6s can be more 8 than 8 because that's to prove something.
Yeah, and that's very much the case here.
Yeah, like I said, he's like always trying to prove that he could wrestle, and like
Kurt Angle
was like, but like on the airplane, Kurt Angle's like, I've just come out of the Olympics, and Vince is trying to wrestle me.
Yeah.
In the airplane aisle, and he's thinking about
drinking the.
Just like stuff because he got bored. Also, another ESTP. Do you agree, John F. Kennedy ESTP?
I've heard it could be ESTP or ESF. It's definitely one of those two.
Socionics people say ENFJ, and I'm like,
that's weird.
Jeez, you are so like you socionics people. Like, this is all because you don't know temperament. You gotta know your Kersey temperament. That would help you so much.
London Johnson's a type of ESTP.
Yeah.
John F. Kennedy was a 7.
Yep.
A lot of ESP presidents.
Yeah, loads. And I think Kersey said, whatever you do, don't bore him. Don't bore John Kennedy.
Yeah.
Right then.
All right, guys, this has been great, but I gotta go.
Yep. And next time, SI. Maybe in a month.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys very much. That was very interesting, as always.
Thank you.